All right, so with the Apple Watch Ultra, it comes in just one case, so there's really no decision to be had there. However, when you order it, you do have to decide on what kind of band that you want, and these are three pretty distinct bands, and it's probably one of the most common questions I've gotten on all my Apple Watch Ultra videos is what kind of band should I get? So that's the goal of this video, is to go over these in a lot of detail to figure out which one's going to be right for you. Now, even though each of these bands is designed for kind of a particular use case, all of them are comfortable and you can wear any of them all day, every day, including sleep. It's just that all of them kind of just have some unique features. And all these bands actually look pretty cool, but what's interesting about the look is that a lot of what we see is about being functional for what each band or loop is intended to do. Now, like I was mentioning earlier, the band or loop is kind of the thing you need to choose when you're ordering your Apple Watch Ultra, but don't worry, you can purchase any of these after the fact as accessories and all of them run 99 bucks. Oh, and all these bands also do work with other Apple Watches too. So here I have like a Series 5, I think. So yeah, there you go. You can just pop one of the Ocean bands on here and there you go. And then vice versa, of course, is that you can pop any of the other Apple Watch bands on here to create kind of a different look for your Ultra, other than the more like kind of more outdoorsy or sporty look of these bands over here. So there you go. Okay, so let's go ahead and start out with the Ocean band, which is probably the most specific when it comes to its function, that being water sports. But just like all these bands, though, they are perfectly fine to wear during the day or any kind of workout. It's just that the Ocean band has some elements to it that kind of lends well to water sports, including the material itself, which is kind of this silicone material, which is super grippy on your skin. And then if we flip it on its side, we kind of notice these holes, which look cool and all, but you'll also notice that it allows the band to stretch a lot, like a whole bunch. And then another interesting element to this Ocean band is this kind of metal loop right here. So you'll notice it actually does go through one of those holes. So this is like a little spring loaded thing right here. So if we go to insert this right here, pop the loop open, then it just like kind of locks into place just like that. And then what happens is that when you put it on, that's how it will secure into place right here. And in essence, this Ocean band is probably the most traditional in the sense that it actually resembles a more common watch band, but they've certainly rethought about how each element works to make it very functional from a water use standpoint. And the Ocean band actually does just come in one size, and this is how it looks on my 185 millimeter circumference wrist. But don't worry, there's also an extension that you can buy for it with an extra 50 millimeters in length, so you can use it with wetsuits. Oh, and then for the weight of the band, it comes in at 34.5 grams. Okay, so moving on to the Alpine Loop, and I love the look of this loop, but a lot of that look does actually have to do with function as well. So it has these little like kind of loops on the outside, but what those are intended to do is be for the metal G-hook, and this is titanium right here, by the way. So unlike the Ocean band, which is a more rubbery silicone type material, the Alpine Loop is a fabric-like material, but a little bit different than the Trail Loop that we'll talk about here in just one second. And then this band does have quite a bit of stretch to it. Let me just go ahead and take it off so I can kind of show you. It does have a good amount of stretch to it, but certainly not to the stretch level of the Ocean band. And then it does also have metal hardware on each end, and I have to tell you that this is super, super satisfying. Oh my gosh, do you hear that? Let's do that again. Ooh, that's nice. Now again, I really like the look of these like little additional loops right here, but what I also wanted to mention too is that if for some reason this hook were to come undone, which to be honest with you, that's going to be super unlikely because that curve right there, it's not going to really come undone. But if for some reason it comes undone like this, well, it doesn't actually loosen because what happens, and I'm totally just getting my arm in a really crazy position here, is that these little loops kind of prevent it from becoming looser. So there's kind of a little bit of a, kind of prevents it from really, really loosening right there. So you kind of hear it. Yeah, there you go. Hope that makes sense. And then one more thing I wanted to point out about this metal G-hook right here, the titanium G-hook, is that there's actually a little bit of a curve to it. So right here, when you lay your wrist flat on the like desk or something, if you're going to be using like a keyboard or mouse, you really don't feel it because it has a little bit of a curve to it. You can see like ever so slight curve. So it's designed really, really well. Now, although it is super secure with the hook and the loops right here, if you're someone that likes to adjust the size of their strap often, it can be just a minor inconvenience. So like for me, during workouts, I move my watch a little bit higher up on the wrist so there's more flush for the heart rate sensor to work with. And then I also kind of just like really like to strap it down a little bit tighter just so the heart rate sensor has the best shot at the best accuracy. It's not like crazy inconvenient or anything, but it's just kind of something that I want to mention. But you can have a lot of confidence in the security where this thing is not going to accidentally come undone. And then this is how the medium version looks on my 185 millimeter circumference wrist. So there's kind of plenty of leeway in either direction for the hook. So it's kind of like right in the middle right here. But they also do have a small as well as a large version of this strap. Oh, and then for the weight, this is a super lightweight band with the titanium hardware coming in at 12.2 grams. Okay, so last up is the trail loop, and just like the Alpine Loop, it has metal hardware on each end, which again is just crazy satisfying. But the difference with the trail loop versus the Alpine Loop is it has a Velcro closure versus the buckle closure on the Alpine Loop. And then just like the Alpine Loop, this is a super comfortable band. I would actually classify it as more comfortable because the material, it has a little bit more like spring to it, and it's a super, super soft material as well. But in terms of like security and keeping on your wrist, honestly, all of them work pretty darn well, but I do kind of like the springiness, I guess you could say, of the trail loop the best. Now, one thing to consider though is that with the trail loop as well as the Alpine Loop over here, these are going to be more fabric-like material, so they will hold a little bit of moisture after a workout or a shower, unlike the Ocean band, which is made out of that more silicone material, which doesn't really hold any moisture. The Velcro is also pretty darn secure too, so for those situations where you may like, have a sleeve or something like that where it's kind of brushing up, it doesn't really tend to fall off or anything like that. So I don't think there's really too much to worry about there. But what's interesting is that you could possibly get this caught on something right there, this little kind of like loop. But that loop does also help in the security on the other end where the strap, it's not gonna like come off. And then this is what the small medium version of the trail loop looks like on my 185 millimeter circumference wrist. So it fits me well when it's on. But one thing I do have to mention is that, okay, so if we were to loosen this all the way, it's a little bit smaller to get on and off my hand right there than the Alpine Loop, like just a little bit different than the medium-sized Alpine Loop. Now, you may be wondering, what's the difference between the trail loop and the sport loop? Because honestly, they're pretty darn similar. And lucky enough, I've got one right here. So here's a sport loop, and then here's the trail loop. So first of all, the hardware is different between these two, where the sport loop has plastic hardware and then the trail loop has metal hardware. And then the other difference is that, well, the sport loop, it has 5 pieces of Velcro on here versus the trail loop, which actually has only 4. However, the pieces of Velcro are just a little bit bigger on the trail loop, and the grippiness of the Velcro feels to be about the same. However, the material on the other side though, this feels to be like a little bit softer, I guess you could say, so that kind of gives a little bit more opportunity for the Velcro to kind of hold on to versus this. It's pretty good as well, but I think that it's kind of a combination of maybe the material as well as the little bit larger patches of the Velcro on the trail loop. Oh, and then for weight, the trail loop comes in at 8.8 grams, and for comparison, the sport loop comes in at a very slightly heavier 8.9 grams. All right, so which one's my favorite? Well, it's kind of a toss-up between the Alpine Loop and the trail loop based on the activities that I do. I do love the look of the Alpine Loop a ton, and I also appreciate the security for things like rock climbing and scrambling and stuff like that. And it's also super comfortable and dries out pretty darn quickly, but I also tend to adjust my bands pretty darn often throughout the day, so that's really where I like the trail loop. It works well for me for stuff like trail running and mountain biking, and I don't think security is too much of an issue with those activities, but if I'm going to be like rock climbing or scrambling, I'll probably be using something like the Alpine Loop. But I also want to know about what kind of band that you ordered with your Ultra and why you chose that particular one, so definitely leave that in the comments section down below. And if you found the information in this video useful, do me a favor and just quickly hit that like button, and also subscribe to the channel for plenty more sports tech videos that are right around the corner. Thanks so much for watching, and we will see you in the next video.